For more, we have with us Dr. Chang-su from the Korea Institute of Defense Analyses. Dr. Kim, thank you for coming on the show today.
My pleasure.
So, as you've just heard, today was the deadline for the two Koreas and the UN command to conclude the disarmament of the Joint Security Area, that's the JSA. Now, it's the area on the inter-Korean border where the two Koreas were able to interact and communicate, and literally where the security and soldiers stood face to face, standing guard on the border that separated the two Koreas. Now, the complete disarmament is still subject to a few more checks and over the next few days, but once it's concluded, it'll be a big change, the military relationship between the two Koreas. Can you explain to our viewers the significance of this change?
Yeah, it has a very important military significance, of course, but much more than as a political symbolism, because we are looking for the end to the hostile relation between the North Korea and South Korea. But now this is a very highly symbolic, and it's going to be a very good opportunity for the outside world, or the audience and domestic audience as well, that we are about to enter a new era of relationship that is no hostility against each other. One of the most important things is that if we completely demilitarize all JSA, beginning with this JSA, not talking about the whole MDL, because it's going to take many more months, but within this month we complete the demilitarization of JSA. As a matter of fact, this has been not the first time. If you look at the 1994, I think it was November the 1st of 1994, when we were talking about the transfer of the JSA duties. It was transferred to the South Korea as a part of the OPCON transfer. To be more precise, it was armistice OPCON transfer. So we're talking about 10 most important duties transferred to the ROK side at the time. So that was a part of the JSA was controlled by South Korean military personnel only, excluding the US personnel. So this is another very important part. Now we are heading forward another transfer of wartime operation control, whether it be sometime like in 20 something. So as a step toward that direction, the denuclearization of the JSA, so that anybody can just travel to this area and they just cross the MDL, and they see this, sense all the freedom they can gain from this kind of free access to this particular area. So I think this is a very important significance to many South Koreans who are actually wanted to visit that place. But as a kind of concern is, if you look at in the past, there are many cases there were some South Koreans and North Korean defectors crossing the MDL. So some mentioned that how we're going to protect all these areas and how we're going to prevent this kind of risks, giving all these details in the Appendix 2 of the complete military agreement that has been signed recently. So this is before removing all these landmines and denuclearizing all the MDL. This JSA is a relatively small area, but has a very strong, high political symbolism as well. So that's why this, I think this is why the Blue House was so hurriedly, signed this document, even though there was a lot of opposition from the opposition party, because whether it's a party or agreement, but this is a very highly important agreement. And the first way to do that, implement that we really mean business when it comes to North Koreans' denuclearization, because North Korea was asking for corresponding measures, not only from the United States, but from the South Korea as well. So if South Korea is ready to talk about the denuclearization, so what kind of response, what kind of measures are you going to take? So that way is we're going to demilitarize the JSA area so that many people just can visit there. And by doing that, we're going to move to the next steps of demilitarization of the two Koreas along the MDL, including eradicating all these landmines, sweeping all landmines, installing a new very safety zone along the way, also including the removing of the GPs along the MDL. So I think this is very highly symbolic, and many people just go there and can feel how much we have changed over the last 1 year. So that's why it is very important as a very initial step toward maybe a couple of time-consuming kind of efforts between the two Koreas.
So as we said, it's a very symbolic move. South Koreans, as well as foreign visitors, will hopefully be able to come visit this JSA area and step over the line and step foot on North Korean soil, if only briefly, and then come back. Of course, they won't be actually able to go into North Korea. And hopefully the presidential office have also said that it could happen before the end of the year as well. But along with that, though, are there any dangers, the fact that this border area is still meant to be a military border, is still meant to be a border that separates the two Koreas? The critics might say that this affects the defense and safetyness that this area provides. What would you say to this criticism?
Yeah, there might be some risk of personal safety that who want to enter this JS area, but I think before they I don't know whether they have to notify the intention to visit this part of the area. Maybe before that they would have to get the permission from the government. You don't have to get the permission from the from the United States Command, because this agreement is made and there was previously there was a general level meeting between the ROC, North Korea, and the United Nations Command. And I'm sure they were talking about the details, how they're going to guarantee security of all these visitors, potential visitors to this JSA area. So there must be some security measures already installed before allowing the visitors, South Koreans and the world from other countries to visit their place. So there must be a very detailed process to guarantee the security of any potential visitors to JSA.
Now let's move on to a different part of the border where there's been some controversial reports over the last couple of days. So there was a report that said North Korea had informed the South Korean authorities that they had lifted the freeze on assets at the Kaesong industrial complex. Now that's the complex that was shared between the two Koreas to have some economic interaction in the past as well. But that was of course halted in 2016 in February after tensions escalated after North Korea carried out nuclear tests and missile tests. The Unification Ministry and the Presidential Office in South Korea have denied that this has happened, but where there'd be some reason these kind of reports have come out, where do you think these kind of rumors and these reports have come from?
I don't have any information what exactly happened to this report, but there was some hopes that because South Korea went to better relations with North Korea, signing this kind of very military documents with North Korea, and that actually raised some hopes in the media as well, because we are talking about the demilitarization of JSA and MDA, also reopening of the Kaesong industrial complex again. As a matter of fact, there was a group of people, South Korean, small, medium businessmen who visited JSA area already, the Kaesong industrial complex as well. So apparently there were some reports that South Korea and North Korea is talking about the reopening of this kind of Kaesong industrial complex, and they are probably one of the most important steps for this. Is North Korea should defreeze all the assets they have frozen over the years. So that's why even though there was a kind of rejection or denial by the Blue House, there was some reports in South Korea that North Korea might have notified South Korean government of their intention to defreeze these assets because there's a first gesture toward the reactivating of the Kaesong industrial complex. I think that's why we have some reports saying that North Korea have finally agreed to denuclearize, defreeze all these assets, South Korean assets. But because the government has officially rejected it and denied it, so we have to wait and see. But there must be some that kind of hopeful sign should come from North Korea, from Pyongyang. That's why people are beginning to just report that this is the next step North Korea should take as a response to South Korea's very warm, goodwill, measures that we have taken over the 7 weeks right now.
Of course, I'm sure North Korea would want this Kaesong industrial complex to be open because they are supposedly being very much suffering under these international sanctions that has been imposed on them.
Very true.
So let's move on to those sanctions actually. So these sanctions, of course, they hinge on the fact whether they can be lifted or not, hinges on the fact whether the North Korea and the US can make progress on talks towards a denuclearization. But now that seems it's been delayed until possibly next year. That's what the US Security Advisor John Bolton has said in reports over the last few days as well. If it gets delayed until next year, as John Bolton has suggested, who do you think gains from this situation? The US or North Korea? Are there gains and losses on both sides? Who do you think, which side will break first to make a move towards making concessions or making a move?
It's hard to predict who's going to break this deadlock first, US side or the Pyongyang side. But there are many reasons that the United States may take a kind of slow process, a slow step toward this important summit meeting between Mr. Kim and Mr. Trump. Not only that, Mr. Trump is very busy with so many other summit meetings, which, for example, he's scheduled to attend the meeting in Paris on November 11th, commemorating the 100th anniversary of the end of the World War II, together with Mr. Putin. So there are so many meetings we are not so concerned about. But for the U.S. leadership, there are many important meetings to attend in the years to come. So I think if you look at the Choi very recent activity, that she was supposed to show up, but she didn't show up at the Vienna she was supposed to meet with Stephen Biegun, but she didn't show up. Maybe there must be some other reasons behind why she didn't show up this time. But some speculation goes on because North Koreans are trying to, again, it's kind of their very traditional tactics of delaying so that they can get as much as possible from the U.S. and South Korea. Nobody knows for sure, but we have to wait and see. But I think November and December is a very busy season for Mr. Trump, and so will be Mr. Moon as well, because at the end of the year we have so many things to pass and get legislated, so it is very difficult. But one thing I noticed is why Mr. Bolton said it'll be after the January 1st of 2019, because we understand in the previous years North Korea has already made a New Year's address on the first day of each year. So Mr. Kim Jong-un will make another very important New Year's address on the 11th, on the first day of January next year. So one of the byproduct of delaying this summit meeting with Mr. Kim is for the U.S. side, they're going to wait and see what kind of the speech is going to make in this very important meeting, if they really mean business, that they are really ready for denuclearization, and how quick they're going to accomplish implement all these denuclearization measures, because it will be a very detailed and difficult job for the North Korean leadership. And Mr. Bolton maybe wants to delay this until they get the real true intention and also the behavior so far to their particular point in January next year. So there are various reasons you can speculate on, but nobody knows sure. But one thing for sure is this meeting, which we actually expected to see by the end of this year, is remote. The chance of pre-remote, that is something we have to wait until next year. Again, going back to the Kaesong industrial complex, whether North Korea has really de-freeze all these South Korean assets or not, maybe it's something to do with the North Korean tactics, because they want to get as much concession from the South Korea and the United States. So that's why the Blue House was denied that kind of possibility. Even given all the givens that we are heading this direction, and we are expecting a lot from North Korea also shows some signs that even though they are willing to run the way of the denuclearization, but in that process, they're going to use South Korea and the United States for their own advantage. And if you look at the Chinese leadership and the Russian leadership as well, they want to really intervene in this very important process of denuclearization and peace building on the Korean Peninsula. This is a very complicated international games, as a matter of fact. So that's why we have some reports contradicting each other. That really confused me. But I think we have to see, and we have to see what would be the real reality, because U.S. elections are coming pretty soon, and there will be a lot of important meetings, not only in South Korea, but also worldwide, China, Russia as well, and also for North Korean leadership as well. So that's why we have seen some kind of conflicting signs coming from each capital.
Of course, as you mentioned, going back, you said the January 1st New Year's Day address for North Korea is very important for their leadership. So we'll have to see what they say and what Kim Jong-un says in that New Year's Day speech. That's still a couple of months away. So hopefully after that, we'll also get your opinions on what they said there as well. we're out of time today, so that's where we'll wrap it up. Thank you for coming in, and it's always great to have you here on the show with us.
Okay, thank you much.
And that's where we will end it. Thank you for staying with us. I'll be back same time tomorrow, but in the meantime, hope you tune into our later newscasts for the latest from Korea and around the world. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.